Alrighty, good morning. Weird side note, after launching my political party yesterday that were called the Dark Greens, I also realised I better wear dark green because that's what they do. And then I was like, well, I just look like I'm in the army. I hope that doesn't confuse anyone. But never mind. That's actually why army fatigues are dark green, so that you would blend in with the foliage. Now you'll notice for the last couple of decades they've been quite often like a khaki tan colour, and that's because they're fighting in a desert that in fact used to be green. But anyway, on that side note, I've got the whiteboard out. I'm gonna Mr. Squiggle this shit. And that means I mean business this morning, and I have a task ahead of me because I have to criticise women without being killed by the collective power of the universe of all the women. And I'm not actually criticising women. I'm criticising a phenomenon that has occurred because of our love for women. Alrighty. So for the vast majority of our political, organisational history, we had men making decisions, okay? Evil, misogynist men. I'm going to have to try and pad the fucking walls here. Now, men made decisions instead of making war, which is another thing to know. So, what we would consider as government and politics was kind of like the circle around men that kept the war down. Like this is a flare up of a cold sore. It's like politics and government was a way to stop that cold sore spreading out. It would just keep it in there. And if all these men arguing, which is they used to argue by writing thousands and thousands of pages of explanation, and then they would have to compete with another man that did thousands and thousands of pages of explanation in order to stop a war emerging, which would kill everyone, would kill men, women, and children, generally, in horrific, uncontrollable, like once it would start, they'd be like, no, we fucked it up, the war's bloody started, bang, 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 oh, bugger, look how many people are dead, fuck, we're gonna have to figure out how to fucking get a bit better at explaining shit to each other, boys. Otherwise, we're going to have to pick up all those dead fucking babies' arms and legs, and that fucking woman's half fucking exploded across the fucking thing. And me mate, fucking George, that I used to play lawn bowls with, well, let's just say that George now fucking occupies a vast swathe of that field over there in France. He was absolutely exploded by that fucking flying, exploding piece of metal that was also created by evil, misogynistic men in an attempt to kind of... Anyway. Anytime we'd get in between the war, when the arguing between the men got too deep and crazy, and now there's thousands of stacks of paper on either side, and that's why they developed that kind of waffling tonality, especially well displayed in England. With the wonder of technology, women started getting bored, I'm guessing. Especially very wealthy women started getting bored, and they wanted things to do, and then the nosy women always want to know what's going on, and so they wanted to know what was going on there. And some of them, amazingly, jumped in, started doing all the paperwork and doing all this thing, and they're the real leaders of the women movement, is those women. Amazing women. They got up to speed and fucking got in the ring and actually did all this fucking bullshit fucking talking and writing and explaining and all the things that made up this circle, and they made the circle even better. And then the men eventually had to figure out that, well, these women aren't doing a good job. They seem to be able to see things that we can't see, and they've made all the effort to learn our ways and do all this thing. And then then other women were like, well, if there are women in there, we want to have a say on the overall thing, that we have to vote. And then anyway, let's get to the point where women demanded that they wanted to vote. Rightfully so, okay? I'm going to have to really, really be careful here. Which, when I'm being careful, means that I have to waffle on, because I'm back in the circle again, trying to prevent war. So we simplistically decided to just add women to the vote. It wasn't simple either. There was a lot of debate on it. And that debate was probably as heated as it is now. Now, this is where I'm going to draw. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show you here. This is what happened, and then we added women to the vote. Now, this is below. I'm just going to... There's our little male dot with a circle around it that women tried to enter. Like the reverse sperm going into the egg, the women entered the egg and you see? Now, what should have happened is the women that had done a good job here should have jumped over here and started their own parliament. and we didn't. We didn't do that. I don't even know. I'll have to go look after I do this. I'll have to go research probably for an hour and a half about whether that was even suggested. But that didn't happen. Now, there would have been communication in my perceived thing. There would have been communication. There would have been like another kind of line here where they would have discussed the things that they'd be like, well, this is a dual gender matter, and then the best of this and the best of this would sock it out like the French boxing ring, but without, you get what I mean? So that's what would happen. But it didn't happen. We did this. Now, I did say, wonderful, amazing women got in that ring. They figured out hundreds of years of male-developed political strategy. They got in there. They went head-to-head, bolstered by their, ever-increasing demand from their female counterparts out in the world to fight this fight. And then they've demanded to get the vote. I'm actually guessing maybe that some of the women in here decided that the female vote wasn't a good idea, but they were not listened to because they were women. See what I'm doing here? I'm a feminist. Trust me. Trust me. So, I used an analogy this morning when I was trying to explain this to my girlfriend. I said, imagine you're married, you're the woman, you happen to be at the house more, not because you're bound to it and you're chained to it, just because, I don't know, you work there and it's whatever. You're at the house, you want some opening in the house to be and you discuss it with your husband and say, I'd like that wall to be knocked down so we could have a better flow. You are right, you are correct. You're in that house all the time. Your observation of the flow is probably correct. All these things. You discuss it with your husband, who traditionally, if we just stick to traditional kind of gender stereotypes, may perhaps know a little bit more about structural stability and building and engineering. And he very beautifully and calmly said, well, darling, I would love nothing more than to open up that and give you everything you want, and this flowing, beautiful energy should flow around the house, and you could decorate it and all these things. But that is a structurally impossible thing to do, and the whole house will fall down if we take that out. Now, imagine a scenario where there's like an Uber Eats for builders. These builders don't have to really have any history of anything. So imagine the woman can phone up and contract a builder to do what she wants, away from the permission of her husband or the blessing of her husband, and then the house falls down. That's a simplification of what happened. Everybody is right in it. The husband was right. The wife was right. The person wishing to just make a living by cutting thousands of corner in some way was right, because he was paid and he did what the woman said. Despite maybe, well, darling, I can try and do that. I think I can maybe squeeze it in. It might stay up. I don't really know. Well, yes, I'll just pay you. I'll pay you. Do it. Just do it. Have it done. That also would have been the mentality of these select women that decided that they wanted to be equal. equality comes with responsibility. That's a slight little jab at women there. It's just a little like, oh, maybe you didn't understand all the intricacies of keeping a building up, but were thrust into the decision making anyway. So that's one effect. Now, the worst effect is these men here that would kind of act as this fence, they would get together and then they would have to then convince all the other men, and then all these other men would kind of quite often get on either side of a battle, and that's where we think of right now we have an election between a two-party system, because we get down to one core difference of opinion and then we vote on it rather than war on it, and you can feel this war energy now, and that's, say, over this nuclear. This power seems to be this point now in Australia right now. We're having this blue and red thing about power, and I'll keep all that aside. But as women started being allowed to vote, what happened is it changed politics forever. It changed the politicians into salesmen to women. Because if you just double the size of your constituency, and like men had built up thousands of years of this through warfare, actually forged in warfare to argue points and to get down to the core thing of what was going on. A lot of times they were in these direct structural things. They had more exposure to this stuff that kind of you learn these principles from. And so it just became far easier to sell to women. You could actually tip entire elections just by selling to women's desires. This was also mirrored in our marketing for products. This weirdly in turn forced the Industrial Revolution, because there was more demand for things that men would just say you don't need traditionally. If we went back to traditional gender stereotypes, men would be like, we don't need that, darling. I'm quite happy with this. The demand came from women. And basically now we are at the result, in my opinion, of however long it's been since women started voting, of just selling to women. And the house is about to fall down. There are so many holes in the house that so many labour hire, Uber Eats workmen have come in and just made adjustments for aesthetics, mostly aesthetics, and kind of not well thought through strategies. And this is where we are. We're at collapse. And it's like global collapse, because when so far in this strategy, in this explanation, I've only been explaining, say, one particular area. Say this kind of sprung up in England, in London. I'm just talking about there. As soon as we start getting international policy being driven to project in the form of trade outward to smaller places and sell to their women products and policies and kind of combinations of products and policies. So products that have some type of hidden embedded agenda policy priming involved in it, then we're in hell. And we're in the reason I'm doing this so much, and I'm 1 degree away from driving a trainload of fucking explosives into the city. I'm not going to do that, but I'm 1 degree away from that as my only option to fucking get used to wake up. That is hell. It's not controllable hell. It's not this. So this fence emerged around here in order to keep us from going to war. This projection out, so selling to women, is like a snowball. Not because of women are evil, not because of anything. Instead of having this and preparing women and women going through their own evolution to create their own environment, their entrance into this system just basically started this whole thing rolling down a giant hill. It was never on a hill. It was It was very firmly on a flat plane. The entrance of women into this arena, well-intentioned but wrongly designed, wrongly engineered, poorly engineered, put this whole ball here because even the men started appeasing to women for all types of different reasons. Put us on this to hell. And this is, I think, like if you think of not Icarus, what's his name? Oh, what's his name? Oh, this is why I didn't pass thing. The guy who pushes the rock up the hill. You can kind of see someone like what I'm doing would be like, I've got my hands on this now, trying to push this uphill. I've been doing this for a long time, just like pushing this giant ball of politics uphill. And the women aren't pushing it downhill. They've just tilted the thing. Because they should have been here. They should have had their own parliament so that they could make decisions for them. What's his name? That's going to haunt me. But I think I've made it pretty clear. And so the illusion, like we've been sold within this new paradigm, is that this guy here, the fate of the world rests on this guy here, who is not actually allowed to exist because women aren't perceiving their progress as destruction, as sabotage. Because all of the effort of the political and the commercial and this covert product priming with political concepts embedded in them are kind of, they're shielding women. So that's woman. All of that is just shielding women from experiencing their actual reality, because they're in a bubble that is basically the entire combined masculine and feminine economies and governments of the world has just turned into like an international farmers market, selling to women more and more encapsulated by the bubble of that reality. So this guy you'd hope that, utopia, he's trying to push this hill up to utopia, and it's on a hill, and we do it. You can see this guy doesn't actually exist. He has to exist. He will inevitably emerge, because he, metaphorically, would be the result of that was the woman encapsulated by the collective PR and government convincing structure. This is the man who is encapsulated by the same structure, but because the effort is more so going to push the feminine, this is becoming permeable. And so these men are drifting out of their structure and inevitably coming up with this conflict and seeing the structure and then having to attempt to do this job here, the guy pushing the rock up the hill. I've been doing that a long time, and now, because of this, it's like I've realized that this is all being led. This is where the scale matters, right? You draw a scale, like a weights here, you know the image of a scale. If we do not balance the actual foundation by, see, and this is where these two here, these would end up being here. We prop up the women's parliament here. We prop up the men's parliament here. We make the foundation level with two structures. And I actually had this while I was in Tasmania. I had two bags and I would put my paddleboard on it to keep it level. The opposite to, if you think of a seesaw or a scale, is a bridge. A bridge has 2 points with a line over it. We had the scale, or the scale or the seesaw, because it was just because we'd had so long. It was just expected. We had people that knew the structures. That's our masculine scale. Seesaw, left, right. Left, right, blue, red, political party system developed over thousands of years was a level on a flat surface already. The surface was just known to be flat because men were all, we had the collective knowledge that all men in their profession specifically were doing their best job to keep the structure sound. Women didn't have enough experience. They didn't develop their own system. We added them to ours. And they inevitably tipped that scale or that seesaw down to hell, not because they would have gone there on their own. If they had have built their own thing, we'd be in an amazing place right now. They were pushed to masculine ideals or masculine desires by PR, marketing, products, selling to women's desires. This had already been, it would exist in men, but it was balanced because it was if within an only male thing, if you were just pandering to desires, although it did happen, this is the circus, bread and circuses phenomenon, but that was well enough known, and so it was debated. That's conservative and liberal. That's we've been in that. When you add women in, like the existence of a ultra conservative woman in this reality, there is I can't think of really ever any representation of that in the world, nor any encouragement of that, nor any, whereas that would be the balance. So say right now this was established, we'd gather all the most influential women in the world, right? We're establishing the first women-only global parliament. The people that would make up this, they'd have to combat the 80-year enlargement of just desire-led creation of the thing. So they would have to be like such stable conservative women that like we would weirdly in this day and age like not even recognize them as women. And so that kind of shows the damage. I myself, I would be incredibly see that as a woman. I would see that as a beautiful representation of women's potential, and not like we've had the kind of those figures like that have emerged through our system, and they're the ones that originally laid the groundwork for the vote to be demanded and to eventually be let through. So we have to just think of this as evolution. We can go back and say, well, we should have done this, we should have done this, we should have done this, but we didn't. We did it this way. We did it the long way. That's what humans generally end up doing. Our system before women entered had indeed been done the long way. It was just a very, very long time. So we'd kind of gotten out a lot of the kinks. This came through, and it's like the perfect blind spot. It was well intentions. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. And this is where we're at. But there is no way, in my determination, like, we cannot balance this current paradigm. We have to establish a female parliament. Because we will inevitably, if we do not, we will be at scale in the situation I'm in, where my children's mother, who's a beautiful person, has been pushed to kind of self-indulgent lifestyle, which has activated all kinds of issues, including substance abuse issues, controlled just lots of things, financial issues. She's actually being dominated by a coercively controlling man and is outsourcing my demise with the entire weight and power of a system that was built by individuals purely pandering towards the feminine desires of a dark reality. If in fact this was an occurrence happening with men at this scale, it cannot even be like understood what that would actually look like. It would pretty much look like instant tribalism / warlord, roaming hordes of warlord, sex trafficking, rapist, fucking, like, think of Vikings, nothing like Vikings. Like if Vikings were on fucking crystal meth and had access to artillery that could destroy every fucking scrap of infrastructure. So I'm not saying that men are better. I'm saying if men were subject, if men right now were in the conditions that I believe women are, and in that reality, it would be impossible for women, well, hopefully not. That's maybe where you get a Joan of Arc emerge or a Boudicca emerge to bring back civilization, I would hope, if we're on the other side of this. But we're not. We're on this side. And women don't degrade in the same way that men do. And we haven't really seen it before, so we're not aware. And the whole system is still rolling down the hill. So as you say, like this, I have an impossible task. I have to criticize our history that involves the liberation of women. And I just want to get down to, it's like, we had this, like this was the scale that kept level. And by adding women to the vote, all we did was shift this fulcrum down here, which didn't work. It just made the whole thing roll downhill. It's a structural misunderstanding of the core foundation and principles that our evolved democratic systems eventuated to. And all these words are really important to describe what's happened. And unfortunately, in my experience, every single woman around me would have almost no way of understanding what I've just said, but are being whipped by media, by social media, by products, by materialism, by everything, whipped in order to appease each thing, which both parties are whipping the women down the same path. That is hell. So it's like, you want to talk about domestic violence, you want to talk about coercive control, you want to talk about feminism, you want to talk about equality. How about we stop whipping women as like almost like horses of the apocalypse? We have all our women attached by ropes, like they're hanging from fucking bondage, dragging the entire civilization to hell. That's an image, isn't it? Imagine in Star Wars, you got Princess Leia and Jabba the Hutt has her, and she's all dressed. She's in a bikini, chained to the fucking thing. That's what I see. I see slave women lashed and attached to a chariot on its way to hell, being whipped by both sides of our politics and by almost all marketing, almost all financial stuff, almost everything. And so why am I representing the church? Well, because the church is the only thing on earth that has the power to prevent this. I was so anti the Catholic Church, you have no idea. Probably I literally released a song yesterday where I'm singing out Rome is dead. Rome is dead. Rome is dead. And now Rome is born again because it's required to prevent this hell. Rome had chariots, it had all the things, but it wasn't this. And no one's leading this. It's just the entrance to the room is like, you get in the room, it's like, here's your whip. Start whipping. Whoosh. Whip those bitches. Psh. Yeah, we're on our way to hell. Psh. That's where we're at. And 99% of all policies and things that are independents and women and policies all over the world and women's groups and feminist groups, all these things, 99% of the things that you are requesting are probably fine, but you are living within a structure where you are lashed to a chariot on its way to hell, being whipped. The ultimate in coercive control, in all the things that these people trying to protect women talk about, is to build an environment of coercive control where you're not even aware that you're in it. And I'll end by giving the example. My children's mother was led into an environment of coercive control where she destroyed her assets, her children's assets, her reputation. Occupied her for countless years now, disabled her children's father for countless years now. To appease an alcoholic, probably drug addicted, suicidal individual that was activated by Mark McGowan, a useless, bottom of the barrel, absolute piece of shit politician who couldn't organise a fucking sausage sizzle if he wasn't protected and ushered in by a system that has been whipping women since they fucking let them vote. And telling you that they were being whipped before they were allowed to vote. You want to know about the dark masculine, toxic masculine mind? The toxic masculine mind doesn't stop women voting. It lets women vote because it knows that they fucking quiver under the whip to the direction of their desires.